Anyway, our next teller is, I mean, so far so good, don't you think? Are these folks amazing? We're just so proud of them. Our next teller is Mattie Ann Barnes. Now, Mattie is actually, you can come on up and Mr. Patterson will help you with your microphone. Mattie's actually an alumnus of our first Tellabration. How many of you were there? And you remember Mattie? We had only 2 tellers, and she was one of them. And so we're glad that she's back and that she's still telling stories. So, the daughter of Andy and Janie, Mattie is, in fact, one of our first tellers, and at that time she attended Pinetta. But now she's at Madison County Central School. This 7th grader loves sports and animals, and you'll see some of that in her based on true events, would you say? Yeah, based on true events story called The Traveling Kitten. Yay!
Meow, meow. As Mr. Clyde made his way down the front steps of his home in Jasper, he discovers a tiny newborn kitten. Before Mr. Clyde could get to the kitten, his dog comes bounding out of the house and grasps the kitten in his mouth. Mr. Clyde then has to jump on the dog and wrestle with it. When Mr. Clyde finally got the kitten out of the dog's mouth, he goes and places it in a 5-gallon bucket in the back of his truck. It was his grandson's very first t-ball game, and he did not want to be late. So he hopped in his truck and went to the ballpark in Madison. Once Mr. Clyde got to the ballpark, he joined his daughter Joy and started to watch the game. While he was watching the game, he heard many people asking, "Do you hear a cat in the parking lot?" Embarrassed, Mr. Clyde continued to watch the game. As the game came to a conclusion, Mr. Clyde told his daughter about the kitten and how he found it. He then asked if she would keep it or find a home for it. Reluctantly, Joy finally says yes. She then takes the kitten and places it in the back of her car with her son. She then says goodbye to her father and then leaves for her home in Madison. Once she got there, she fed the kitten some milk and bread, and the kitten hungrily scarfed it down. When the kitten had finally finished, Miss Joy's dog then pounces on the kitten and terrorizes it as well. After that predicament, Miss Joy had had enough, so she called my mom and asked if we would take the kitten off her hands. After a long discussion with my dad, my mom finally said yes. She then began to make the bedding arrangements for the kitten. Before Miss Joy brought the kitten over to our house, she gave it a quick bath and then headed over there. The 15 minutes that it took her to get there felt like it was forever. But when she finally got there, us kids all ran towards the car and began to hold the kitten. Once we had all gotten a chance to hold the kitten, we all decided to name him Jasper, since Mr. Clyde had found him in Jasper. Jasper was the sweetest kitten to ever walk the earth. Every night he would climb up on my shoulder, curl up in my hair, and fall asleep to a nice cat nap. That Monday, whenever we first got Jasper, my mom had texted my aunt and asked if they would like to have the kitten. My aunt, after a few minutes of discussion with her husband, finally said yes. Since my grandparents were heading over to Pensacola, Florida, that Thursday, we made arrangements with them to take the kitten over there with them. Except for this time, the kitten would ride in the comfort of a cat carrier, not a 5-gallon bucket. Every night until Jasper went to my aunt's house, we would cuddle and play with him until he would retire to a nice catnap in our arms. That day, whenever he left, we all cried and said goodbye to sweet little Jasper. Later that day, when we came home from school, my aunt sent a picture of Jasper being cuddled with by one of her 7 sons. So the traveling kitten began its journey in Jasper, landed in Madison, Florida, and then finally landed in a permanent home in Pensacola, Florida.